Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pro Football Network's NFL Draft Insider Show. My name is Matt Canada, founder and CEO of Pro Football Network. I am joined tonight by our chief draft analyst and NFL insider, Tony Pauline. We have an absolute ton of information to cover tonight. Tony, we're going to talk about your updated rankings, Isaiah Wilson, free agency, the salary cap. Most importantly, especially for Panthers fans, the latest on Deshaun Watson, and a whole lot more. But let's get right into it. We have zero time to waste. Let's talk about your updated big board first, which was published earlier today on ProFootballNetwork.com. In your latest update, you have 25 players with solid first-round grades. You have 35 players with late first and early second-round grades. You have 117 players graded as day one or day two selections, and you have 284 players with draftable grades. Total over 900 prospects that you have on your big board currently. You can find that again at ProFootballNetwork.com. But the biggest mover, Tony, for you in this update is Kentucky cornerback Kelvin Joseph, a transfer from LSU. Now, prior to this update, you had Joseph as a mid-third round pick. But now you're saying you think there's a chance that he can go even as high as the low 30s. So talk to us, Tony, about Joseph and why you moved him up so much in your latest update.
It's something that I alluded to even as the game day blogs were ending in December. Joseph's name became more prominent. And when I finished my SEC film work and watched Kentucky, I was very impressed with him. His size, his ball skills, he's really good facing the action. I spoke with some NFL people about him. We compared notes. My biggest concern with Kelvin Joseph was his 40 time. There's one play, if you watch the Florida game, where he couldn't catch Kyle Pitts, the tight end of Florida. Now, Kyle Pitts is a fast tight end, but he shouldn't be faster than a cornerback. I've been told that Joseph is going to run in the low to mid 4.4s during his pro day at Kentucky. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully that happens. I think a lot of his draft stock will hinge on his 40 time. He's over 6 foot tall. He's got terrific ball skills, played instinctive football. Wasn't a guy that just, was a battering ram and was a good athlete. You could see on the field he understood what was going on, would make plays all over the field. Kentucky used him primarily facing the action. So you got to see how he does during pro day drills, flipping his hips, backpedaling, things like that. But if he runs in the low 4.4s, I could see Joseph sliding into the late part of the first round. Remember, second half of the first round last year, there were a lot of cornerbacks who surprisingly, were chosen and were drafted in the top 32. And I think that when I speak to NFL people, I think that Joseph has got more upside than any of those players from last year.
And, there's a whole lot more to go to the pro day, which you talked about. And we'll see where that shakes out. And we'll see where he kind of ends up with your latest update. And yes, we have that comment from AC Flaccavelli. It is draft season, and we are marching towards the NFL draft. But we're going to take a quick turn back to last year's draft. And while Kelvin Joseph might end up in the first round, Tony, one guy we did know who ended up being drafted by the Tennessee Titans last year in the first round was Georgia offensive tackle Isaiah Wilson. We spoke about this in length last week regarding the reports around Wilson and that GM John Robinson had basically put him on notice. Now, you had said on this show that you were hearing that some around the league would not be surprised if Wilson got released by the Titans in the coming weeks. And on Monday night, Wilson tweeted that he was done with the Titans. He deleted that tweet. The internet, we know, lives forever. You cannot get away with that. People screenshot it right away. Tony, what do you think about this entire situation?
I think what I said last week, and that it's going to be sooner rather than later. The tweet said, Wilson's tweet said, "I'm done with football with the Titans." And it's kind of prophetic because if he's done with the Titans, as I said last week, there were a lot of teams that took him off their draft board. So I don't know that there's going to be a big market for Isaiah Wilson if the Titans cut him. Now, again, let's revisit what I said last week. He's a terrific player. He was an outstanding right tackle for Georgia. Absolutely. When you watched him on the field, he deserved that first round grade. But there were a lot of questions about him off the field, some personality issues. And as we know, last year, I believe he had 2 run-ins with the law. And that is part and parcel to why teams took him off the draft board. There were other issues, but I mean, this is just a wasted opportunity. These are a lot of unforced errors on the that Wilson is committing. It's going to be, I think it's going to be, as I said last week, sooner rather than later for his career with the Tennessee Titans. And then we'll see where it goes from there, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams knocking down Wilson's door to sign him.
It's a shame. He had a ton of potential coming to the NFL, and to throw it away like that. And I agree with you, Tony, to have that kind of talent, to have that kind of potential, to be a first-round pick in the NFL, and to throw it all away your rookie season. I don't think there's going to be anyone knocking on his door. All it takes is one team, though, but there's a lot of red flags here moving forward.
Yeah, it is. And it's like I said, it's a wasted opportunity. And this was the guy that the Tennessee Titans hoped was going to replace Jack Conklin, who they could not re-sign in free agency a year ago.
Right. Now they're going to be back in the market. It is what it is. Mike Vrabel and John Robinson had both said that he was not the same player that they evaluated when he showed up for training camp and the such. Tony, we're on a roll talking about first-round picks. Let's continue with that, but let's shift our attention to the New York Jets, another AFC team, and Sam Darnold. Of course, there have been a lot of rumors swirling around what the Jets might do with Darnold. You've discussed the Jets and their potential offseason plans in length on previous editions of NFL Draft Insiders. You've also released plenty of information on ProFootballNetwork.com. Here we are, though, less than a month away from the start of the new league year, and there are still just as many rumors. What is the latest you are hearing about Sam Darnold and the New York Jets?
Yeah, I can't pinpoint it down that the Jets have made a final decision with Sam Darnold. They're just scouting the quarterbacks, the top quarterbacks that'll be available to them in the draft. And in my opinion, that's the best option. Now, I've talked with people in the league, and it is their opinion that they feel the best strategy for Joe Douglas is actually to trade Sam Darnold and select a quarterback with that second choice. Why is that? Because they feel that keeping Sam Darnold is too much of a risk for Joe Douglas. If they keep Darnold and then he falls flat in 2021 and the Jets have to start again in 2022 looking for a quarterback, the writing is going to be on the wall for Joe Douglas. He's going to have a short leash because he made this decision, as opposed to if he selects a quarterback with that second choice and then works with that quarterback, he's going to have some time. Remember, this may be this is Douglas's second free agency and second draft, but it's also the third season he's been with the team. So the feeling is there's a lot of risk for Joe Douglas keeping Sam Darnold. And remember, Darnold, the people who are running the Jets right now, the football operation, Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, even the president, there is no connection between them and Sam Darnold. They didn't choose Sam Darnold. So the feeling is there's just a lot of risk for Joe Douglas to keep Sam Darnold and to build around him, because if he falls flat, it's going to the blame is going to fall squarely on the shoulders of Joe Douglas. Now, don't anybody go out there and report that Tony Pauline is saying Joe Douglas is going to trade Sam Darnold because he's at risk. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's the opinion of people in the league that they feel the best strategy for the Jets for Joe Douglas is to trade Darnold and start anew. You may not agree with it, but it makes a lot of sense.
And they're sitting pretty at number 2. You could go anywhere. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is going number 1. You could literally do anything. Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase, maybe. The Jets are in a tremendous position. You could do anything you want in their position, and we'll see how that shakes out. You said they're going to be looking at the whole picture and seeing what's going to happen here, and we'll see shakes up. But the Jets are in prime position here and have a ton of leverage with the quarterback situation.
The Jets are in a real good spot where they're at, and to their credit, they're approaching it the right way. They're going to scout the top quarterbacks and then make their decision. They've got 2.5 weeks before they got to make this decision on Sam Darnold. So they're in a good spot, and in my opinion, and I routinely criticize the Jets, I think they've done a good job thus far.
And I see the comments about a lot of Panthers fans here wondering when we're going to get to the Deshaun Watson news. We will get to it, and you need to stay around because it is good, and I think you'll be happy. But let's turn our attention now to the start of the new league year, which is March 17th. That day, Tony, is also when free agency opens, but we know there are plenty of conversations already happening around the league. What kind of leaks can you expect?
Well, I'm told that the free agent chatter is probably going to start to pick up next week. Remember, a year ago, we were at the Combine. In fact, if it wasn't for COVID, you and I would be in Indianapolis tonight at the Combine. And a year ago, I was reporting stories on Pro Football Network about how Phillip Rivers to the Indianapolis Colts was going to happen, how the Jets were very interested in Jack Conklin as well as George Fant. They didn't sign Conklin. They probably should have. They did sign Fant. So I don't know how much detail we're going to have this year as compared to previous years because there's not a lot of face-to-face meeting, but expect the free agency chatter to really start to pick up next week.
All right, but you, Tony, you work the phones like none other. I saw you in Indianapolis last year working your connections and everything else, doing what you could get the stories before anybody else. It has to be something you can tell us about what you might already be from around the league.
I've heard two things in the past 24 hours. Number one, someone told me that they expect the New York Jets will be big players in free agency this year. And I was also told that one of the players the New York Jets like is New Orleans Saints defensive end Trey Hendrickson to fill their void at pass rusher.
So expand on that for us a little bit. What do they like about what can he do for the Jets here?
I spoke with somebody yesterday, and we spoke about Hendrickson, and there was the implication that the Jets liked him. So I reached out to a source in the New York Jet with the New York Jets today, and they said, yes, we like Hendrickson, and we are interested in him. Now, it didn't go any further than that, but I wouldn't expect it to go any further than that at this early stage of the game. But we know this. The Jets have needed a pass rusher since the days of John Abraham, and Hendrickson is a guy that they seem to like at this point.
So we know the Jets have a new head coach, right? Robert Saleh, defensive coach, great fiery coach who made his mark there in San Francisco. There, he's going to install very likely a 4-3 defense. Is Hendrickson a good fit for that system?
Perfect fit. I mean, like a duck in water. I think he's a great fit for Saleh's 4-3 system. The way he plays, he's not a real big guy, but he's quick. He's explosive, fundamentally sound. I think it's really square peg into a square peg, if you would.
And regarding the price tag, anything you're hearing about what he might cost for the Jets?
I'm hearing around $13 million a year. Maybe a few dollars more, maybe a few dollars less, but that $13 million figure per year is what I'm told it's going to cost to bring in Hendrickson.
Okay. Now the Jets obviously going to have to fit Hendrickson into their salary cap as well other teams around the NFL with their free agents. ESPN's Adam Schefter just a few days ago, he acquired a memo sent to team executives and general managers which stated that the league and players union have agreed to a minimum of $180 million for the salary cap number for the upcoming season. But we've heard here at Pro Football Network, you've heard as well, that this is just a rough number and not the final one. Are you hearing the same, and what is the word on what it might change to?
Yeah, I'm hearing that number is likely to grow when all the revenues are counted. I'm hearing the number is probably going to be at least $185 million per team, but it could go as high as $193 million per team with the salary cap. I'm told that 180 figure was basically just put out there because there were a lot of people, both teams as well as people in the players union, who were getting frustrated and wanted a base number to work off of. But that number is expected to go pretty much higher.
Now, is there a set date as to when that official cap number will be released?
No specific date. All I've been told is it's going to happen before March 17th. It could happen the day before March 17th. It could happen a week before March 17th. There's no specific date, though.
The all the stuff that we talked about last year with COVID and everything else and all that with the salary caps and people scrambling at the last minute, looks like it's going to be a little bit more of the same this year, except we do expect that floor, and we'll see if we go higher there. Obviously, will impact teams' plans. Obviously, it goes higher. Teams will have more money to play around with, and we could see an active free agency period in the early goings. So now with that salary cap, Tony, that can be attributed to TV contracts that the NFL negotiates, right? And so now in their latest round of negotiations, the numbers are staggering. Billions and billions of dollars the NFL is talking about to these TV companies. It's quite crazy. So, in fact, it was reported that the NFL, they have been asking for 100% more than what the cable networks are currently paying for their package. So do you have any ideas what these numbers are expected to be when negotiations are finalized?
I'm told that the initial numbers that they were looking at was an average of about $2.5 million per network per year. So that's all the networks: Disney, ABC, NBC. Oh, NBC is a little bit less. Disney, Fox, CBS. It's going to average. They were expecting initially to average around $2.5 million per year per network. Now, that number has grown exponentially. There was a report that the NFL put a proposal in front of Disney asking for $3.9 million a year, and Disney rejected that offer. But the tone and the way things are working is that people feel that that initial belief of a $2.5 million, of $2.5 billion per average per year per network to end up anywhere between $3 to $3.5 billion per year per network.
So likely 1 billion more than what they initially expected. So how much does that raise the salary cap?
It was explained to me that if the network deals go from an average of 2.5 billion per network to 3.5 billion per network, that's going to raise the salary cap per team from 12 to $15 million.
So could a TV deal this year change the salary cap for 2021, do you think?
Yeah, still to be determined. I mean, obviously, we talked about this over the summer where there was consideration of borrowing against future caps to keep this year's cap higher or artificially high, because as you knew this year's cap was going to be lower because revenues were lower last year, primarily due to no fans in the seats. But we're looking at it like this. The NFLPA would love to have the cap artificially pushed higher and then borrow against future revenues to pay back what they used this year. What I was told is when you look at the league right now, there's about 18 teams that are under the salary cap. So the question is, do those 18 teams want to give up their competitive advantage and now that they're under the salary cap and say, okay, we'll increase the cap even more and give those teams that are over the cap, not an unfair advantage, but an artificial advantage. What I expect to happen is if these TV deals get done in time, you're going to see a lot of bickering, a lot of negotiating, a lot of hard talk amongst the NFL teams as to whether or not they will artificially pump up the cap number for this year and then borrow against it in future years to pay back.
What I find most interesting, Tony, is that Disney is going after the Sunday ticket package, which DirecTV has held on for so many years. And as an avid Miami Dolphins fan for a long time here, living in Connecticut, getting those Sunday ticket packages, it's quite expensive. And there are lots of technical difficulties and so forth. And I know there are not a lot of people happy with the current Sunday ticket package. So it would be interesting to see how that all comes into play and how they might be able to wrangle that away from AT&T, who now holds the rights to that.
Well, I can tell you this, as someone who's been a Disney stockholder for more than 20 years now, and someone who is a father to a Disney nut who gets Disney online, it would be fine with me.
We'll see. The NFL did say they want to have deals in place by March 17th, the start of the new league year, as we just mentioned. So We'll see. It's coming to a conclusion pretty soon. And the NFL is king. Even though the Super Bowl ratings were down this year, the NFL is just going to rule the roost with all these TV contracts. They make billions and billions of dollars, and these TV networks are willing to pay for it because, again, NFL is king. There's nothing else to say.
Well, that's the interesting thing. That's the interesting thing. And how does that figure into the negotiations? The TV ratings were down, but there were more people watching the games this year and the Super Bowl streaming live on other avenues other than network TV. So you got to wonder how this all plays into the network contracts. And then, of course, how they stream that, whether they're streaming it on YouTube, Twitter, wherever, Amazon, I think Nickelodeon, wherever. That's another revenue stream for the NFL.
So speaking of negotiations, right, and here's the new thing, every Panther fan that saw our tweet earlier is now tuning in for the very latest on Deshaun Watson. And before I jump into that news, and this is where, if we had sponsors, Tony, we would cut to commercial break, play the sponsor piece, and get our money. But we don't have any sponsors yet. Hopefully soon. And if you guys have comments and questions, put them in. Let's keep those questions to draft prospects. We'll throw a few towards Tony's way after we talk about Deshaun Watson here. So if you have any questions about any draft prospects in this year's draft, throw them in there. We'll get to them. But let's jump to Deshaun Watson, Tony. Now, reports state that he has okay to trade to the Miami Dolphins, New York Jets, and Carolina Panthers. Tell us the very latest on what you are hearing regarding Deshaun Watson.
First thing is nothing's imminent. As I've been reporting for a couple of weeks, I heard even earlier today that the Texans are going to do all they can to keep Deshaun Watson. At this point in time, it seems like it may be an uphill battle because the Texans have done a great job shooting themselves in the foot with just foolish decision after foolish decision. but they're still kind of hell-bent, if you will, on keeping Deshaun Watson. Now, the big noise I've heard over the past 24 hours comes from the Carolina Panthers. I spoke with somebody last night, and we spoke about Deshaun Watson. This is a person to know, and they told me that the Panthers will do everything they can to acquire Watson, and they will pay any price to acquire Deshaun Watson. I made a few more calls today, and I found out two things. Number one, their new GM, Scott Fitterer, who came from the Seattle Seahawks, is on board with trading for Watson more than anything else. And most importantly is the owner, I was told, wants to make it happen. The owner, Tepper, wants to trade and bring Deshaun Watson in. Now, let's remember where we were a little bit more than a year ago. And what happened was Matt Rule, everyone expected him to be the head coach of the New York Giants. It was a job he coveted. It was a job that the Giants wanted to bring Matt Rule in. What happens? His first trip is to Carolina. He meets with the owner, David Tepper, who, as a famous quote from The Godfather, made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So Rule asked out of courtesy, can I make one call to the New York Giants? Rule called the Giants, I believe, on the plane that he flew to meet with the Panthers. And the Giants heard what the package was that Rule was getting, that Tepper had given Rule or offered Rule to coach the Carolina Panthers. And the Giants said, thanks, but no thanks. When I'm hearing that the owner is on board and the owner wants it to happen, the owner being David Tepper, wants the Carolina Panthers to make a trade for Deshaun Watson, you've got to believe that the Carolina Panthers are right there at the front of the pack with the other teams in the attempt or basically likely, if there's a trade, to be there at the very end to acquire Deshaun Watson.
You know, we have talked to people in the past few weeks about this, and they have all told me the price is going to be insane for Deshaun Watson, right? We saw what Matthew Stafford went for it. That was a bit. Deshaun Watson's going to be more. But you know, people I've been talking to, they said all it takes is one owner. All it takes is one owner to sign off on it and to tell their GM, to tell their head coach they have job security and to give up the farm for a guy. And if Tepper is going to make this happen, he is the guy, like you said, that would make this happen. The guy takes risks. The guy is not afraid to take chances. And I could totally see them swinging for the fence. And I see a lot of comments here. A lot of Panthers fans, I think the Panthers fans are freaking out a little bit when you said any price. And, you know, when the Texans hear that, they get him out of the AFC, number one. Matt Rule gets his guy. Tepper gets his guy. And they continue to build upon their 5-11 record last season. And they were competitive last season. You put Deshaun Watson on the Panthers, they can build something special there in Carolina.
Two things. You know, I was told they'll pay any price. That doesn't mean they're going to give away the next 6 first-round picks. So, don't, you know, you can read into it what you want, but don't go overly crazy with it. The other thing is this is, you know, at what point in time did the Texans price themselves out of the market for Deshaun Watson? Because you're saying that Deshaun Watson is going to cost a lot, but the fact is there's going to come a point in time where if Deshaun Watson is hell-bent on not playing in 2021 because he demands a trade, there's going to have to be some meeting point. That market value is going to come down somewhat. The only reason I would say, you know, don't forget about the New York Jets is Woody Johnson's back in the picture with the New York Jets. He's back in charge. And remember, Woody Johnson's two biggest moves, or two of his bigger moves as owner, was trading for Brett Favre and trading for Tim Tebow. They both turned out to be busts. So I could see Woody Johnson, with all the capital the Jets have, if it comes to fruition where they have a chance to say, let's trade away and bring in Deshaun Johnson. But from what I hear, Tepper, of the owner of the Carolina Panthers, wants to make this happen.
We will see. You're right about taking them themselves out of the market for that price tag. There's been a lot of smoke. Deshaun Watson said he is not going back to the Texans. He has not returned phone calls. So, you know, it's going to come down to a game of chicken and who's going to blink first. And eventually, you know, if this continues to happen, why be the Texans and deal with the bad PR, right? Why deal with all of that? You're going to have to get rid of him eventually if he's going to play hardball and hold out like this.
You mean PR that's worse than what they've already been receiving the past month and a half?
Yeah, I don't know how it can get any worse, but yes. So we'll see how that goes. Tony, let's take just a few questions about a few draft prospects. I saw one come in earlier. Jamar Chase versus Devonta Smith. There's been a ton of debate about wide receiver 1 here. You have Jamar Chase ranked at the top of your board. You have him as your wide receiver 1. Where do you see all these comparisons? Well, not comparisons really, but people saying Devonta Smith could be wide receiver 1. What are your thoughts on those two players when you compare them together?
Devonta Smith is a terrific receiver. There's no doubt about it. As I said a year ago, I thought he was the best receiver of that Alabama group. He would have been the first one drafted, ahead of Jerry Jeudy, ahead of Henry Ruggs. He's the most complete receiver. He's got terrific hands. He's plays fast. He comes away with the ball in a crowd. The problem is he's not a real big receiver. He's not going to fit every system. I think what he did at the Senior Bowl, that stunt that he pulled at the Senior Bowl, where he wouldn't get on the scale, he wouldn't weigh in, and then he didn't practice. I thought it was an unforced error because now all he's done is raise questions about his size and raise concerns about his size. We're eventually going to find out how big he is. But now, that narrative, and he gave a great speech, if you remember, when he won the Heisman about how, if you're small, don't let people think you can't play. If you feel you can. That was a terrific speech. But then a couple of weeks later, the guy doesn't even want to get on the scale at the Senior Bowl. It was an unforced error, and now people are talking about the size. That's the big difference between him and Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has got a stout build. He's maybe an inch to an inch and a half shorter than Devonta Smith, but he's stronger. He's thickly built. He's as lethal downfield. He's as effective and underneath coverage. I think the difference is Devonta Smith isn't going to fit every system, where Jamar Chase, who's an exceptional receiver, is a plug-and-play type of prospect for just about any offensive system.
And you mentioned in your mailbag here that earlier today on Pro Football Network that if the Dolphins have a chance at Jamar Chase, they're going to look at him very strongly at number 3. So,
and why not? I mean, they drafted 2 offensive linemen early last year, and they've had good results with them. So people say Penei Sewell. You got to remember, I mean, you got to think of the salary cap down the road, and you got to spread the wealth, so to say. So Penei Sewell would be a nice addition. I don't know that he's a necessary addition, as opposed to Jamar Chase, who I think they really need a lot of help at receiver. Jamar Chase steps on the field for the Miami Dolphins. He's automatically their number 1 wideout.
Absolutely. And I saw one more as well earlier about Kyle Pitts. You have him. I believe he moves him up to number 4 in your new rankings. He's not a tight end, Tony, right? He is just an offensive weapon. Where do you see him? Can he be? I know we talked about it before. Do you think he's going to crack the top 10?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And read what I said in my rankings about Kyle Pitts. It's not just how he played. It's who he played, who he did it against. And when you watch the film, you watch the SEC title game against Alabama. Look how many times Nick Saban and the Alabama defense pitted Patrick Surtain, who's going to be the first cornerback selected in this year's draft, up against Kyle Pitts. Watch the South Carolina game. See how many times South Carolina had J.C. Horn in one-on-one coverage against Kyle Pitts. Watch the Georgia game. See how many times the Georgia that has 4 terrific cornerbacks that are going to be drafted, that are going to be selected in the draft, went one-on-one with one of their cornerbacks against Kyle Pitts. And all Kyle Pitts did was get down the field and catch the ball against these highly rated cornerbacks. So, I mean, you're going to match him up against what, a safety, a slow safety in the NFL? He is not right. He's not a tight end. He's basically a 250-pound receiver playing the tight end position.
Scary, scary thought. I know a lot of people are high on him. A lot of people love what he can bring. And, I'm going to be rooting for the guy. I think he's tremendously talented, tremendously athletic, obviously. And we'll see where he lands on draft day. Tony, as always, you have brought the heat. You dropped plenty of information for all of us to digest from around the league. If you want to go back and listen to any of this, you're tuning in late, tuning in early, dropped out, coming back in, you can do so on any of our social media platforms, our Twitter page, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel as well. Be sure to check out ProFootballNetwork.com for Tony's latest big board update, which was published just a few hours ago, his mailbag, which was released earlier today, and lots more analysis from around the NFL and around the NFL draft in the upcoming weeks and months. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PFN365. Follow Tony at Tony Pauline. And for Tony Pauline, I am Matt Canada. Thank you for watching, and we will see